Tū mai te Māori oho, te Māori ārangi, te Māori āpapa, te Māori ā, i o te aho tapu e. Tau ai te Māori o ngā atua, tau ai te Māori o ngā tūpuna. Tau ai te Māori o te tangata, tau ai, tō ai, tā te Māori e. Ui e, tā e ki e. Kia ora koutou, i tuaki nei te mihi ki a koutou katoa, e hui mai nei, te whakarongo ki wenei o ngā tangata. E rungi i te atamira nei, kia kōrero, wetahi o ngā kōrero, e pāna te ngā Taonga Pūoro. So koenei te tū te mihi atu ki a koutou nau mai, hara mai, tau mai te whakarongo ki wenei o ngā kōrero, ka kōrero hia kei mui a tātou i tēnei wā. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora rā tātou katoa. So I just wanted to say, welcome everybody to our, I would like to call it our TP talks, not our TED talks, but our TP talk. And you're here today as part of our kaupapa, te ara Haumanu. And so, we've just invited a few of our fellow Taonga Pūoro enthusiasts and experts and people working in the fields of Taonga Pūoro and other mahi, mātauranga Māori, throughout the motu. So, we'd just like to welcome you all here to, have a listen, see what sort of kōrero flows out based on some of the questions and kōrero that we have here today. So, I'm James Webster, James Webster, from Ngāti Maneapoto, Ngāti Mahuta, Tainui Waka. And so I'm te tei kai Pūoro, and nau mai, hara mai, tau mai. Kia ora rā.
Tēnā tātai te whare e tautoko ana ngā kōrero kua kōrerohia, ngā mihi kua mihia. Ko Libby ahau, ko ai te atu kai pātai, ui. I'm helping ask questions. What is that really called?
Facilitator.
Thank you. Facilitator. We are a part of Haumanu Collective, and hope you all enjoy today. I'm going to ask a series of questions, and then ka tūwhera ki a koutou if you are wanting to ask any more. Ka pai? Tēnā. Let's have a seat. Get comfy. I'm going to whiu mai pātai ki a koe, kei te kōka. Ko wai koe, tō ingoa, no hea koe, me ngā te orokohanga o te Taonga Pūoro ki te ao o Koka Aroha.
Tūtahi me mehi ka tika ki tēnei whare whakahirahira. Me tira o tātou nei whare rangatira no takutaha rongo whakaata taitanga maha ki te mai ki Murira. Te mihi atu ki ngā whenua, papatua nuku e takoto nei, rangi nui e tuake mai nā. Huri noa ki a tangaroa ki hene mōna ma e pari mai ana ki ko atu nā. Huri noa ki ngā tangata whenua, koutou katoa ko ngā manuhiri tuārangi, ngā whanaunga tata, ngā hua tata, ngā hua o Muriake nei, tēnā rā koutou. Now, how te pātai tuarua? Kia ora mai, I've got Alzheimer's, so I'm feeling a bit nervous about this.
Te pai, te orokohanga o te Taonga Pūoro ki te ao o Koka Aroha.
Ai, well, wai mari au. Me kore te reo Pākehā?
Anything.
I tipua ki au I Rotorua, ana kai te maumahara pai au ki tērā o aku whanaunga o Joe Malcolm. He was one, I remember playing the Putorino. And of course, you know, as a little girl growing up and hearing about Haumanu and Tanekai, you knew very much, you knew everything about Putorino and so on in terms of that communication between Tanekai and Haumanu, signalling that he was awake and she could swim over, and etc., etc. And then this other whanaunga of mine we've just talked about, he would also bring along principally the kōwauau, if I remember correctly. So that was part of my ao, but I wasn't actually utilising that because I was usually singing and, you know, waving my hands around. And although I'd learnt... and the Pūrerehua, yeah. But then I went to Waikato University and became very good friends. And Hirani was also my colleague, Hirani Melbourne. And Richard Nuns would come and visit us, and they, of course, were becoming very prominent leaders in the world of reviving the Taonga Pūoro. And I think it was at one particular conference when I had just delivered my kōrero, my talk, and I finished by singing a waiata that I'd composed. And they came over to me afterwards and said, "Oh, we're thinking of doing another album, and we really need a female voice, and we'd like to ask you to join us." So, nō ki te whiwhi, I felt incredibly honoured to have been asked. And so we put down that album, but the very sad thing, of course, was that I'd gone home to feed my little baby girl, Kaurangi. When I came back, I'd heard that Hirani had been taken to hospital, and he wasn't well at all. And then, sadly, he died within a few days of that time. So to finish the album, I then composed and sang the final waiata, which is E taku kuru pounamu, isn't it? That's the one? And would you like to share? To sing it? Oh dear. E taku kuru pounamu, kua ngaro atura, e te tau o taku ate, kua wheturangitia, hotu wana te manawa, mō koe he atu nei, whati ana te koauau, wahangu anei. Still makes me want to cry, sorry.
Kia ora, Aroha.
Kia ora.
Kia rawe, ki te rongo ki te rā waiata. Hey, we're going to throw it to Shane next. And yeah, pretty much the same question, bro. So ko wai koe, no he koe, and yeah, just give us a bit of an insight into your life, knowing that you work here at Te Papa and have for a while. And yeah, your relationship with Taonga Pūoro would be cool. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, ko Shane James ahau, ko Kaitiaki Taonga Māori. My job here at Te Papa is looking after the Māori collection. I've been here 17 years, artist before I came here, still an artist, but I had to find some money somehow, so I got a job at Te Papa, which is an amazing place to work, surrounded by our taonga. It was my beginning of my journey into the world of Taonga Pūoro. When I first got here, I saw some guys playing pūtātara and pukaia, and I was like, wow, cool. And I says, can I have a go? And so from that experience, I slowly developed playing Taonga Pūoro. And in the beginning, it was pretty rough. We would welcome people here. So we have a lot of pōwhiris here, welcoming them onto this marae. So we would start with the playing of pukaia, pūtātara. And it was really at that time where we started that relationship with the Haumanu Collective. And that sort of, we became a close partnership with going to wānanga and building up the skills for the many people that worked here. It had already started well before I came here, but I continued on. And we had groups. At some point we would train up the staff here, and it was non-Māori and Māori. And what was interesting was that it actually, New Zealanders seemed to be a bit more hesitant about joining our rōpū, but people from overseas were really quick to go, wow, this is amazing, I can join. So that was really interesting to see that dynamics happening, which is changing now, obviously. But one of the things we had here, we had these taonga that you see here. There's a lot more. Haumanu Collective donated these taonga to Te Papa, and it challenged the museum tikanga about when things came into the museum, you didn't touch them. We put them in cases, we put them in glasses, and you just looked at them, worshipped them, and that's what you couldn't touch. So these ones were brought in, and they were brought in that we want to donate these, but they have to be used to add mana to them, to add stories to them. And that was very difficult for the museum, and it's still difficult for the museum today. We have, when these taonga come in, there is a hesitancy to use them and go, oh, but when you touch them, you're damaging them. But we're a living culture, and even when we use the cloaks, we have a couple here that we use in our repatriation. We used them when we did the hautapu matariki ceremony. Some of the cloaks you saw, the tohungas, were actually from the collection. They whakapapa to those tupuna that made them, and that even made the museum really nervous. We're like, oh, but there'd be wind, and they will move the feathers, and they could fly off, or all those things, or it could rain. But and when we use them for repatriation of ancestors, we put them on. The damage is always occurring, but damage also occurs when you exhibit something. And they're very used to that. So we said, well, we do accept damage when we see the benefit of that damage. And it's very minute. You don't see it with your hands. Usually, if you're in a museum, you'll be wearing gloves when you touch them. So that's why we brought these ones out, just to show you that not all museum things are artifacts. They're living cultures, and by us interacting with them, with you being there, you create a relationship with them that is beyond the glass. So, kia ora.
No, a tāhua taua whakautira. Beautiful answer. I think it's really awesome when we have a lot of my oranga i te ao Taonga Pūoro is around the practitioner side, so to hear kōrero from this kaitiaki side is amazing. Tēnā koe. Oh, and you just had a jam earlier on. I didn't even know this was Haumanu Collective, and I just picked up, so tēnā koe. I tā koha mai e nei taonga kia tātou. Sis, whakamohio atu ko ai koe, no hea koe, Taonga Pūoro in your life.
Tēnā koutou. Ko te Kahureremoa hau, he Ngāti Kahungunu, he Tūwhare Toa hau, he Māma. Ko tērā. As soon as I was born. My parents don't play Pūoro, but I grew up in a reorua home, so music, te reo Māori music was like it, and Hirini Melbourne was it. For me, I get real emotional, fire. That was so beautiful, but I get real emotional talking about Papa Hirini, but he's the blueprint, he's everything to me. In all the little nerdy ways that I can trace all the things that he's done, I have. But it's actually kind of funny that I ended up in Pūoro, because it used to really annoy my mum. Like, toi api api used to be a comeback. A toi api api. Like, we used to answer back to my mum and say toi api api. Because we love that song so much, but we'd say toi api api to each other because it's such a cool word. And my mum would tell us off and we'd be like, a toi api api. And my sister, Amiria, the fifth of our 8, she was born to Te Ku Te Whē. Yeah, primo for my dad, but my mum was like, if your dad plays this CD for another hour, ka kōhurutia e ia. So then I come home when I'm 19 with a whole bunch of Pūoro, and my mum's like, ugh. But they're real supportive of it now. Yeah, just mai rā no, ko papahirani te take, ko taku reo Māori te take, ko taku pēpi te take. If you haven't seen me around with my best mate, Piatania, my daughter, out of my children, she's the one that wants to be a part of this ao with us. So, yeah, it's choice. I bring her, and all of us aunties and uncles are like, yes, ko koe te take. So I don't know if I answered that really well, but yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Kahureremoa. Yeah, sort of just, listen to your kōrero about, your remembrance about Hirini Melbourne and that, because, you influenced a lot of us, in the Taonga Pūoro scene. And also Hini Wirangi, you talked about, when you were born.
Yeah.
One of her kōrero was like, the first, our first pūoro was our voice, eh?
Yes.
And, and we hear the sounds and the rhythms of Papa Tūnuku when we're in the puku, the beating of the heart. So, we are born, mai I te ao pūoro. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. And so, yeah, I'm going to chuck it to you now, bro. And as you can see, we're sort of like, waine tāne, trying to keep it balanced.
That's the pattern.
And, no here, koe, and how do you, what touched you in relationship to Taonga Pūoro, bro? Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou whānau, ngā mihi o tā wā nei, wā whakahirahira nei, I koe he moko puna mai te pai maunga o Ruahine, so ko kahunganu tērā, tūwhare tōhoki, e ki te tau tō kraua, no maniapoto rerea hou, matakore, and yeah, how I got into Pūoro was through my nanny. When I was really young, she loved eating boo-boos. And so we used to take mutton over the Ruahine, over to our cousins in Taonga. And then we'd do the swaps for kaimoana. And then, so she was popping her boo-boos and eating them, and then she washed this one and came out and said, do you know these are our musical instruments? So, yeah, he paku kakano, but it was enough to, just start to look at, because I thought at that point, raku was our Māori musical instrument, I didn't really hear kōrero around Taonga Pūoro, because it's sort of talking 70s, 80s. And then like the rest of us, later on in life, I came across Matuhirini, Mahi, and Whai Aroha. Oh, kia ora. Did you hear all that? Yes. So the main point is my kuia, Marina Pōtaka, Mako Whare Mā Hihi Whenua is her name, and ko Wehe Naianei, ki ngā whetū. And so she was really influential. And then I had another kraua as well, Ngā Hapi Paratūai, and he was also, later on in my life, he shared a lot of kōrero around pertaining to Taonga Pūoro and our rohe up in the back blocks of Taihape. So I met Richard at the British Museum one time, years ago, and then he was asking me, where are you from? I said, Taihape. He goes, and then after that, he used to call me the mayor of Taihape. Because, as you know, he was a bit of a cheeky fella. I want to share this funny story about Richard. When I first met him, I had a pūtorino that one of our kraua from Tūrangi had made me. And because I had it in my kete, I was like a young Pūoro geek too, rocking up to, and I listened to his kōrero, and then in the British Museum and all that. And then then I went up to Mihi to him after that, and then I go, I play Taonga Pūoro too, and he's like looking at me. And then he goes, you show me. So I pulled out my pūtorino, and it was in front of all people like this. Yeah. And then he looks at it and he goes, and then he went to play it, but he couldn't actually play it. and then he goes, you know, you got to make sure you make these properly, like real serious. And then I go, oh no, I'm not sure I can play it. Boo! You know, so all the people were looking, oh, who's the expert here? So yeah. But yeah, those were my influences, just to add to the kids, the tamariki, because we're going into kura a lot with the tamariki, and so I had to learn really quick how to play. Otherwise, like kids will just say, "Oh, this sucks," or you know what I mean. They're very honest, so I had to learn quickly. And, so yeah, kia ora, kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora. You can see that we have different variations of kōrero, of how we came into Taonga Pūoro, and it reminds me of a kōrero that Brother Horomona shared with us last night. Tarinaki maunga, you have one whānau on one side of the maunga and another on the other. It's about they have the same maunga, but very different kōrero about the same maunga. And it's the same with our Taonga Pūoro. Ruby, do you have boo-boo story?
Do I have a boo-boo story?
Ko wai koe, no hea,
Haere.
Taonga Pūoro.
Kia ora koutou, ko Ruby May Hini Panui Soli toku e koa no kaitahu rātou ko Waitaha ko Kāti Māmoe ōku iwi. I tipu ake a hau kei raro te korowai aroha o tūwhari toa rawa ko Te Aroha. Te Aroha, tūwhari toa. That was the weirdest mihi I've ever done. Just pretend it didn't happen. So yeah, I went to primary school at National Park Primary School, had all of 30 kids, and one of my teachers, Maria Kappa, she played the kōwawo, and that was a normal part of our day. It was something like it sat on the whiteboard next to the mat, like she had it on where the whiteboard pens were, and she would play every day, and we all wanted to play kōwawo too. But she said the boys didn't have the attention span for it, or something like that. So the boys made pūrere and the girls tried to make kōwawo and play kōwawo. And just learning, just the techniques of playing, it didn't have to be a kōwawo, just that, like blowing techniques, it was a huge thing for me at that time. And what it did as well is I was learning the guitar at school as well, because it was either guitar or ballet, because there was 30 kids, so there's nothing else to do. And so I had the kind of Western understanding of music on one side and our understanding of Pūoro on the other, and I found I was able to kind of move in and out, and that's something that by the nourishment I've had from the community as I'm in, the Pūoro community specifically, that I've always been able to do even when I haven't had access to the instruments, is have that as an understanding. So my first instrument was kōwawo through that. Actually, one of my favourite things that I like to say about that is the boys all made these pūrere hua, and we'd use them a lot for prize givings and stuff. And they all painted them and decorated them. And one of them had his decorated as a poke ball, like the Pokemon ball, and he was so proud and he'd whip it around. It was amazing. And yeah, I always think about that when I'm working with kids now, and you know how we've always been innovating and making things more personal and bringing in our other world. And then I ended up doing music at university. I did a degree in jazz performance, and then I kind of started bringing Taonga Pūoro back into my life during that time, and ended up doing a music therapy thesis on the use of Taonga Pūoro within acute psych, which was a baptism of fire, but I absolutely loved it. I loved working in psych. I love working with our taonga, and by that I mean both the people and the instruments. And at this point in time, I'm doing a PhD in a similar topic, but looking wider hauora. And yeah, I think kind of everyone's had their kind of, this is my take. I think my take is using these instruments for hauora, for whānau, for connection, for understanding of te taiao, for all those things around performance, or understanding that performance is just one fraction of what these things can do for us, and how, you know, even audience sides, if you look at something, I'm not sure if there's one around, like the coup, for example, that's an instrument between usually you and one other person, or you and your partner, or you and your child, and just thinking about how amazing that is and the value of performance, even if it's just for one person, as ritual and as culture, and also all the stuff we do as, big performance is incredible too. So just really lucky to be here with these tuakana as well.
Kia ora, Ruby. Awesome. It makes me think about way back when we started getting into Taonga Pūoro, sort of back in the 80s or early 90s, with Hirini and Rich and all them, when Haumanu was just sort of on the rise, and so a lot of our focus back then was just, how do you make it, what does it look like, what sort of binding is it, and what does it sound like, so it's been cool to observe the growth, and, there's a lot of influence on sort of the hauora and the healing aspect of it now, with the oro-atu and mahi you're doing, and, in the midwifery sort of area as well. So it's cool to see, the growth and development sort of coming through, and, it's awesome. So yes, what we'd like to do now is just, you've got a small window of insight into all these people and their diverse sort of lives and where they've come to. We just want to chuck it out to the audience if you have any questions. For all these, the panellists up here. Just put your hand up, I'll bring you the mic. Yeah, where's the one? Anybody? Come on. Oh, there's one right there. God. It's starting to feel like, I wouldn't say Oprah Winfrey, but...
Kia ora. No one wants to be first, eh? What would be your whakaaro for someone in their early stage of connecting to Taonga Pūoro? To anyone, popcorn, that feels like answering.
I'll tell you one of my stories. When I was doing carving out at Whitireia, we did, it was actually up in Massey. I did a carving and we had rangi kippa. It was for my first time having a go at making a puturino. So I made this puturino, but I made the mistake. I wanted to use all the wood. So I made this big, massive puturino, and it didn't make any noise. And I played it, and very often they say it's not the instrument, it's the player. But in this case, in those early days, because I didn't know how to make it, it was the puturino that wasn't able to do create the sound, and that put me off for a long time. For like 10 years, I didn't go near it. And then I did another carving course, and we made pūtangitangis, the clay things, and they're really easy to learn to play. So they're really good for learners. And once again, everyone in the carving course was playing, and I couldn't get it. But years later, I let it settle for a little bit longer, for another year. But now, many years later, I'm very confident. So probably in that, never give up. Keep going, it'll come. Hopefully it comes quicker than when it took me, but you'll get there in the end. So you've really got to... And Warren told me, he said, just 10 minutes a day, just try it a little bit, and you'll grow with each time. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just jump in there? I want to... sometimes it looks like these might be inaccessible because they're so flash and beautiful. This is for when you get to a point, But I'll say go outside is the first one. And then... These sound simple, but this is honestly how. Go outside, and our atua, I'm going to sound witchy, so my answer's going to be witchy. Yeah. But our atua will talk back to you if you listen. They want to connect with you. So the first thing, go outside. Shh. Listen. And every bit of inspiration and kōrero that you need is out there. Even the instruments, everything that you need is there. And once you start just putting yourself in the path, everything else will fall into place. That's exactly what happened to me. I took my pen lid kōauau to a wānanga and someone felt sorry for me and James gave me my first karanga manu. But that was probably one of the most profound things. It wasn't me that said that. At our first Haumanu Te Papa wānanga, one of the uncles who didn't even come to the weekend, but he showed up at the end to just drop bombs on us, truth bombs. And he just said, our atua haven't stopped talking to us. We've just kind of stopped listening. And that's like one of the most important skills in Taonga Pūoro is actually the ability to listen. So, and just like Shane said, it's a practice. So practice.
Can I add a quick thing? Just total for everything that's been said, that's all really great. Another thing, and something that I noticed coming from Western music and a kind of like a university Western music where it's competitive and it's nana boo boo, I can do this better than you do kind of vibe. You need to kind of, the abandonment of the sense of Pākehā time and the abandonment of the idea of what success is with Taonga Pūoro is what's actually going to help you to do what you need to do. You know, I was talking in the workshop we did this morning about pū motomoto, and I spent the whole summer playing pū motomoto, and I'm not an amazing player of that particular instrument, and that's fine. I've really enjoyed that time. And I never go like, oh, I've played pū motomoto for 90 minutes today and nothing's happened. You know, like it's just kind of accepting that you're building a relationship. If you're catching up with a beloved kaumātua, you're not like, right, this has been 90 minutes. You know, you're just spending that time and you're getting that kōrero. And that's what you're doing with your instruments, or, you know, and even, you know, tū rākau can be, pakuru can be an instrument. You know, you're spending time with your instruments, you're getting to know each other, there's that wairua exchange going on, and removing that, oh, I've been playing for this long, this many years, I should be like this, because you're exactly where you need to be. I have a beautiful relationship with the pū motomoto I have, even though I'm not, you know, the most incredible player, we still have that time and have that relationship, and I can use it to communicate what I need to. Yeah.
Yum, Libby. Could I just add to that? And that I've had very little experience, and quite frankly, I sort of gave up because I thought, oh no, I'm useless at this. But mainly it's because I would usually be doing the singing as well. It was easier for me, rather than switching from singing to doing something, working, say, with the pūtōreno, to be able to use other instruments which I could, like the pūrerehua, and other instruments that I could, even just little kōhatu, my favourite kōhatu, and I just go like this, you know. And that was sufficient for me as a contributor. I always felt very insignificant, and that, you know, was just going like this. But however, that was where I was at that stage, and that was sufficient in my opinion. And now what I do is I go out into the ngahere or beside the way with no one around me and no one can hear, and it doesn't matter if I make mistakes. The fact is I'm communicating with our tūpuna. Me te tuku e te aroha ki te wāhi ngaro, ki te ngahere, ki ngā moana, ngā whare tūnei i ramo katoa. So, kei a koutou te tikanga. You do what you feel comfortable doing, and ultimately.
Yeah, just real simple, just spend heaps of time in the pūtaiao. Yeah, and like everyone said, just be in the nature, you know, ata whakarongo, listen, and because that's where all our music tradition is, you know. And I think one thing I wanted to add was that all of us are really colonised into thinking that the Western scale is music. Yeah, but when you look at our pūoro, it's the nature scale. So it's actually much more vast than C, D, G, E, F, you know, like on a piano. when you look at that's a very limited scale, but we're sort of all being programmed musically to think that that's what music is. And I can't remember who said it, but it was, you know, if we listen to the different types of sound that the wind made, it would blow that scale out of the park, and that's just the wind of Tawhiri, you know. So, yeah, whakahoki ki te pūtaiao, yeah.
Kia ora, kia ora. And I feel like if you can't go out into the environment, Haumanu Collective has a Facebook page and an Instagram that you can like, share, and we also have a website, www.haumanucollective.com, where we have events on there. So, and our podcast that we're going to release later on. So, like, share, tag us. Yeah, doing it right? Cool. But on top of that, we are trying to whakarite wānanga, to create wānanga to be better accessible for our people. And so if we can't get out, like I said, to the taiao, go on those websites. Any more questions? That was a beautiful question, by the way, thank you. Or comments or stories you would like to share? Ka pai. Nā, kei te pai. Oh, no.
I just have a question of wanting to hear your whakaaro around if there's any tikanga around Taonga Pūoro, especially for wahine. I know rāranga, we are advised not to weave if we have our ikura, and wondering if this is the same with Taonga Pūoro, and yeah, just any of those whakaaro, if there are any.
Should I? Do you want it? Well, we've actually, a little thing that is happening here, I've got a little puna Taonga Pūoro that I've started with my whānau and my daughter. We're all wahine, so we've actually formed our own tikanga around that because we can. And I actually find that there are times, so we listen to ourselves, our tinana, and what that says, where we are on the moon, because I'm not the same wahine when I bleed at whiro that I am when I bleed at Rākaunui. They're two different wahine. Okay? So we have it where we check in with each other, but actually, sometimes it's way more powerful when we play, when we have our waifero. There's that channel that happens. Also, when you're on your waifero, both sides of your brain are like fully engaged. I don't know about you, Wahinema, but sometimes do you notice that you're a better communicator when you're on your waifero? It depends. Again, that comes into checking in with who you are. This is tikanga that we've developed for our whare rauroha. And we're pretty handy about that too, because we also work in a way that we take tapu time. So we have days, and there's a few of us, so we do have to check in with each other. But I would say, as opposed to holding restrictions on ourselves, because we're not doing a lot of it's channeled mahi a lot of the times. So I guess that clumsiness that I would feel like if I was weaving is kind of different. It sits in a different place, like I'm channeling something else. So yeah, for our whare rauroha, our tikanga is, it depends on the moon phase and what face you're wearing at that moon phase when you're bleeding. But when it hits right, man, we can use that tapu time to really channel into some power. So is that a cool? That's just us.
I've got a few whakaaro on this one too. So when I was that really small person that I once was, when I was a child, and we were all playing kōauau, and there was a kaumātua who came to an event and was like, girls don't do that. And we all stopped, yeah? I'm sure some people kept going because their family tikanga was different. My family, I absolutely love my whānau, big whānau guy, but they don't have a lot of knowledge around tikanga and reo and things like that. So when they hear somebody older than them, more confident than them, that's the way it is. So I didn't play from the age of like 7 properly, you know, I'll play a penlet or whatever, from like kind of 7 till high school, and then it was when there was something around and I felt kind of guilty about it. So imagine if that hadn't happened, how much better I'd been up, no, but imagine if that hadn't happened, how I would have felt about my Māoritanga and all that whole time. And, you know, we don't have any evidence of that, for as far as I know. But there's also tikanga as individual. I know that in some places women don't play putatara, for example, but I think you really need to check in with your whānau and what your tikanga is and find out those reasons why. In terms of whether to or not to play on waiwhero, that tikanga doesn't bear in mind people with things like polycystic ovarian syndrome or things like endometriosis who might never get to play if they can never do that. So that's, for me, I would way rather those people would be able to play and to use those things for their wellness rather than wait till they're better. If you're wanting to use Taonga Pūoro as any form of rongoa for yourself, waiting till you're better kind of ruins the point. Because when you're better, you're not going to need it in the same way. You're going to need it in a maintenance way. So we don't follow that tikanga, but it's also that checking in thing. And I can definitely identify with what you're talking about with that kind of the ira tangata being open and being able to channel those things. And I think knowing what protective factors you have around you to support you if you are looking after someone else, or you're doing pūoro tautoko or rongoa pūoro for somebody else, what you've got to support you at the end of it, because that's definitely a mistake that I made when I first became a therapist and was working in those spaces. And I'd be like, I'm so good at my job, and then come home and be like, I am bad at being me. You know, like your first job is you. Your first job is to look after you. Yeah.
Okay. Tēnā kōrua. That's fabulous. I have heaps of ideas going through, and I just hope I remember 1 or 2 of them, because with that Alzheimer's, it's frustrating. You've got it all there, and you're scared you're going to lose it. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the fact that, you know, when we have our mate wahine, we're told not to do certain things like weave and so on. But I feel, and to me, so much of it is tapu time, but it's also a very practical thing. But you don't want to be sitting on your whāriki that you're making and kaparu, you know, and then it's ruined. Whereas I put this in a totally different category. I think of Taonga Pūoro as being a healing mode for us. And although I'm not sure that I've ever played Taonga Pūoro when I used to have it, mainly because, I don't recall, but I don't think I would have thought it as being a problem, because for me, Taonga Pūoro is a healing element. And often they call it mate wahine sometimes, because we do feel ill and we feel tired, we might get depressed, and I personally find that playing the Taonga Pūoro, whichever one we choose to use, provides that healing element, which I think we need at that time. Yeah. So although I've never even thought about this before, I see it as actually being a tonic for us, and for us not to put extra barriers up, you know, that may not be needed. So I think this is probably one of the most important questions, because I, for one, have never thought about it in all these decades.
I was thinking about it in terms of performance as well. I was putting as opposed to like, I wouldn't ever restrict myself if it was just me and I'm just at home and I'm in my practice. Yeah. I just always, but I'm thinking about in terms of when I'm holding spaces like a performer or kai kōrero pūrākau, or if I'm doing a formal thing, I really would check in on whether or not, you know, this is all good and I'm feeling strong in my time of waifero. Yeah, that's what I just wanted to. I was going for a specific vibe, and that was performance.
Just hei tāpiri ake ki ngā kōrero, tikanga, te tika o te wā, yeah, whatever's right at the time. And I te mahi raranga, practical, te ao karanga, if you're the only one, Papa Pau, te mara says, me whati te tikanga kia ora ai te tikanga. Yeah? So me he e rere ana a waiwhero, and kei te tino rite koe, there's ways around it. Yeah. And I think too that our Taonga Pūoro, koe te atua o tēnei hue, ko hine pū te hue. Yeah. So who can tell us, wahine, that we can't play these instruments? Because our atua are wahine. Well, our more wahine, I should say. Because we are beautiful. You wanted to have a kōrero, Aroha?
I was just going to say, oh no, it's right, kei te pāwhu warawari au nani.
Yep. Hei tāpiri ake. Te whakatangi o te kai.
Kia hata kātai?
Oh, me nā e āhei ana. Te whakatangi Pūoro me te kai.
Ai, koina. No, I find it really fascinating that women aren't allowed to do X, Y, Z, but we've still got to cook. You know, really? Men? So that would be my... Is that what you're... Koina te kuru? No, it wasn't.
So the question is, can you still play Taonga Pūoro in the kitchen? And where else did you say? Goodbye. Ana. Yeah. Yeah. When?
I'm trying to figure out what he said.
Well, he manu, you know, e tangi ana I te pō, we've got, so yeah, it makes, don't, like, I've, yeah, whakautu kino tērā.
Does taiao stop at night
Yeah,
time?
yeah, exactly. Again, like, we come back to, like, oh, there's manu at night, sweet as. That's not a good answer, sorry.
We still hear the crackling and the kauta of the ahi.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I would go back to Kōkaroha's practical.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a ahi, don't put your tongue over there. Whai? He kōrero anoa, a koutou.
I had there was a kaumātua from Kukupa from Naitahu. And he was a really wise guy, and I'd said to this thing, because I collect tonga tuturu, so I have it all around my house. Not in the kitchen, but there's no barrier between there and my lounge. So I always kind of thought, well, how does that sit? Because I walk through there with kai, I've got kai in me, and all those things. But what I wanted to do was make the tonga a natural part of my life. I didn't want to do what museums do, put it in this sacred room and you go in there and that's the only place you see it. And I wanted my kids to grow up with it being a natural thing, because that's what our tupuna, they had their tonga on them, they had their taihas, their all these tonga with them. And what he said to me was, you can't unintentionally take away tapu. He said you have to have the intention of you trying to not take away tapu, but interact with tapu. And he said, and that was really a beautiful thing. He says, if you don't have the intention to do something to the tapu, then it's not possible. So I use that to make me feel safe. But you do have to take in, you know, you don't put it on with the kai sitting on the table. And I've even seen people put their taonga on a chair. And I'm like, I'd rather put it on the ground rather than where someone's bum was. So just little, common sense thing.
Also, how can you not want to play at night? Like, if you see hina, how, like, I would find that so hard to, like, not want to sing to hina. Just the thought.
Kia ora.
Awhina te tai au, te au, te pōne.
Ai. Tēnā koe. Tēnā koutou. Yeah, pai te pātai, ngā pātai. We have 5 more minutes. One more question to ask for the group. One more question, and then we'll come back to here and then finish off. Ka pai? Ko ai tēnā.
Oh, 2 more questions.
Can we have 2 more questions?
Can we have 2 more?
They're both really special people.
Yeah.
Kia ora koutou, rau e ngā kōrero. This is for any one of you, including you, Libby and James. So what are your aspirations for Taonga Pūoro, and how can this be strengthened with our people?
Ka pai, I'm going to whiu the rākau to te Kahureremoa, and we're going to have 30-second answers for these questions. What are your aspirations mo te ao pōpō, te ao Taonga Pūoro?
To become obsolete. Because it's so normalised and everyone's doing it that I don't have no more mahi.
Yeah. You always have
Straight
mahi
up, I'm
ka
not joking.
Yeah.
Nah, healthy ecosystem of Taonga Pūoro, like, and also just so, that was it.
Kia ora. Ruby.
Ai, he tautoko, te whaka-Māoritaka o ka Taonga Pūoro, really, like to normalise Taonga Pūoro completely. And I think to show that it's not just what we do on stage, but it's what we do at home, it's what we do in the hospital, it's what we do in the street, like, and we use it in all those different ways, and understanding what that looks like in the Māori of that, rather than them just being physical instruments. Also, a big thing I'm passionate about is that it's the job of Māori to innovate, and we have always been innovators. Like, there's only a few examples of something like this, which is made by Sam Palmer. It's right there. But there's only a few examples of tauka like this, but we have heaps of them now, and they're absolutely amazing, right? And it's the job of Māori to innovate our technology and to make sure that we always have rakaterataka over our own technology.
Kia ora. Jerome.
Tautoko i me kōrero, I think to normalise, but, for me, really normalise with our iwi Māori, because that's something that's really been lost for us, and so to gain that back for our iwi Māori, and without also normalise, without also losing the root of the kaupapa, because I think sometimes to normalise something could also mean it becomes really common and it gets taken off somewhere else. That's quite a scary thought. So maybe that's a bit of a fear-based response. But
Accurate.
Kia ora. Shane.
Probably to see it as a vessel that enables people to connect to a realm that we don't see.
Kia ora.
I guess my focus really is in terms of whare taonga, since we're in this situation now, that those who work within the whare taonga throughout the motu, our motu, do as you have done today, as an example. I'm not saying that they haven't done it before, but that I would encourage them to continue to enable our people to come in and view the taonga, if it's possible to have some of the wānanga like this, or occasions like this, where people can come and view them. I'm not suggesting people actually play with the taonga that belong to, that are ancient and precious, but that there may be other opportunities similar to the ones you have produced, enabled us to enjoy today, to bring in more about particularly our young people and our older people who may have as a few people have here, memories and recollections, so that then those stories can be held and shared with their own people, ne? A iwi, a hapu a iwi. Those are just a few thoughts. But, and I look, for instance, at the karetao, this karetao, beautiful karetao that James has created. And I remember being part of a small group and then a burgeoning group that wished to revive the use of our karetao Māori. And I'm no longer part of that now, but I must say the years ago when I was, it was very exciting. It was a very new thing for us, we felt. And as a result of that, Brian and you and others have created taonga, which are karetao, which aren't just playthings and don't need to be treasured, but also I think it's incumbent upon us to pass what little knowledge we have onto our young ones, our mokopuna, our tamariki mokopuna, that they may hold those in their hearts, close to their hearts, and be protectors of them. And I'm sure my little mokopuna will be protective of the taonga we have. Watch out if people don't read it from. I haven't yet given her our karetao. You know, she's got the little cute little ones I think you made for me. I've shown her a male and female one, but I won't give her the precious one that's all carved. But he tauira noho tira. I think it's whatever we can with our knowledge. Aha ko te aha me tuku iho. It's incumbent upon us to share the knowledge that we have with the right people, with people that we know will treasure that knowledge, and in treasuring it, be very protective of how it is treated and how it is used by others. Because the last thing we want is it suddenly to be overseas and we're seeing it on TV and it no longer holds that precious nature. In fact, it's been denied that precious respect and it's been belittled. Kei te marama? That the actual tikanga can be belittled if we aren't very cautious in the way in which we share the knowledge and share the taonga with others.
Kia ora, kia ora. Moku ake, everything that everyone has said, accessibility, that's all I'm keen to whakanui I tēnei wā. Haumanu Collective have amazing sponsors, Creative New Zealand and Ministry of Cultural Heritage, who have given us this koha to be able to make Taonga Pūoro accessible to you all today. And if we can all do that in our own rohe and in our own whānau and in our own whare, you know, how amazing is Taonga Pūoro going to be in 2 weeks' time, in 2 years' time, in 20 years' time? E mihi ana.
Kia ora rā koutou. Just like to wrap it up today. As saying, you know, it's a small window of kōrero today. There's so many questions and so much kōrero to be had. And so look into the taiao, look into the internet. You know, there's information out there. There's, you know, heaps of stuff going on, and it's all in the seeking, you know, and what's sort of close to your heart. So encourage you to get eke ake te Taonga Pūoro. So and just like to me to everybody for coming in. Listen to our panelists over here. Some of them were a little bit reluctant to jump up, but I think they've enjoyed themselves sharing some kōrero. So, thank you all for coming today, and kia to Papa and putting, helping us put on this kaupapa. Kia mihi ake kia koutou, kia tatou katoa, e hui mai nei. And come along to our concert this evening. I think it's 7 o'clock. You know, here 7 o'clock, and. We're going to be launching our series of podcasts. It's, season 1, Ororua we call it. So it'll be out there tonight. So check that out online as well. So kia mihi ake kia koutou, kia tatou katoa. Kia ora rā.
Kōrero ki. Great hosting.
What a say.
Oi, mai nei ai.
Ria nei e te hau, horaia, horaia, e te ua. Whiti, whitia, e te rā.
Oh, fair day. Hang on.
Turn around.